Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Chapter 4, Introducing Western Sociology, and our topic is Class Struggle. For Marx, the most important method of classifying people into social groups was with reference to the production process rather than religion, language, nationality, or similar identities. He argued that the people who occupy the same position in the social production process will eventually form a class. By virtue of their location in the production process and in property relations, they share the same interests and objectives, even though they may not recognize this immediately. Classes were formed through historical processes which are in turn shaped by transformations in the conditions and forces of production, and consequent conflicts between already existing classes. As the mode of production, that is, the production technology and the social relations of production changes, conflicts develop between the different classes which result in struggles. For example, capitalist mode of production creates the working class, which is a new urban propertyless group created by the destruction of the feudal agricultural system. Serfs and small peasants were thrown off their lands and deprived of their earlier sources of livelihood. They then congregated in cities looking for ways to survive, and the pressure of the laws and police forces them to work in the newly built factories. Thus, a large new social group was created consisting of propertyless people who were forced to work for their living. Their shared location within the production process makes worker into a class. Marx was the proponent of class struggle. He believed that the class struggle was the major driving force of change in society. In the Communist Manifesto, which was also a program of action, Marx and the Engels presented their views in a clear and concise manner. Its opening lines declare the history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle. They went on to trace the course of human history and described how the nature of the class struggle varied in different historical epochs. As society evolved from primitive to modern through distinct phases, each characterized by a particular kinds of conflict between the oppressor and oppressed classes. Marx and Engels wrote freeman and slave, patrician and plebeian, lord and serf, guild master and journeyman, in a word, oppressor and oppressed, stood in a constant opposition to one another, carried out an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight. The major oppressing classes of each stage were identified from the contradictions of the production process. In capitalism, the bourgeoisie owned all the means of production, such as investable capital, existing factories and machinery, land, and so on. On the other hand, the working class lost all the means of production that it owned or had access to in the past. Thus, in the capitalist social system, workers had no choice but to sell their labor for wages in order to survive because they had nothing else. Even when two classes are objectively opposed to each other, They do not automatically engage in conflict. For conflict to occur, it is necessary for them to become subjectively conscious of their class interest and identities, and therefore also of their rivals' interests and identities. It is only after this kind of class consciousness is developed through political mobilization that class conflicts occur. Such conflicts can lead to the overthrow of a dominant or ruling class or collision of classes by the previously dominated or subordinated classes. This is called a revolution. In Marx's theory, economic processes created contradictions which in turn generated class conflict. But economic processes did not automatically lead to revolution. Social and political processes were also needed to bring about a total transformation of society. The presence of ideology is one reason why the relationship between economic and socio-political processes becomes complicated. In every epoch, the ruling classes promote a dominant ideology. This dominant ideology or way of seeing the world tends to justify the domination of the ruling class and the existing social order. For example, dominant ideologies may encourage poor people to believe that they are poor not because they are exploited by the rich, but because of fate or because of bad deeds in the previous life, and so on. However, dominant ideologies are not always successful, and they can also be challenged by alternative worldviews or rival ideologies. As consciousness spreads unevenly among classes, how a class will act in a particular historical situation cannot be predetermined. Hence, according to Marx, economic processes generally tend to generate class conflicts, though this also depends on political and social conditions. Given favorable conditions, class conflicts culminate in revolutions. Emile Durkheim may be considered as the father of the sociology as a formal discipline, as he was the first to become a professor of sociology in Paris in 1913. Born into an Orthodox Jewish family, Durkheim was sent to a rabbinical school, a Jewish religious school, for his early education. By the time he entered the École Normale Supérieure in 1876, he broke with his religious orientation and declared himself an agnostic. However, his moral upbringing had an enduring influence on his sociological thinking. The moral codes were the key characteristics of a society that determined the behavior patterns of individuals. Coming from a religious family, Durkheim cherished the idea of developing a secular understanding of religion. It was in his book, The Elementary Forms of Religious Life, that he was finally able to fulfill his wish. Society was, for Durkheim, a social fact which existed as a moral community over the above the individual. The ties that bound people in groups were crucial to the existence of society. These ties or social solidarities exerted pressure on individuals to conform to the norms and expectations of a group. This constrained the individual's behavior pattern, limiting variation within a small range. Construction of choice in social action meant that the behavior could now be predicted as it followed a pattern. So, by observing behavior patterns, it was possible to identify the norms, codes, and social solidarities which governed them. Thus, the existence of otherwise invisible things like ideas, norms, values, and so on could be empirically verified by studying the patterns of social behavior of people as they related to each other in a society. For Durkheim, the social was to be found in the codes of conduct imposed on individuals by collective agreements. It was evident in the practices of everyday life. The scientific understanding of society that Durkheim sought to develop was based on the recognition of moral facts. He wrote, "Moral facts are phenomena like others. They consist of rules of action recognizable by the certain distinctive characteristics. It must then be possible to observe them, describe them, classify them, and look for certain laws explaining them." Moral codes were manifestations of particular social conditions. Hence, the morality appropriate for one society was inappropriate for another. So, for Durkheim, the prevailing social conditions could be deducted from the moral codes. This made sociology akin to the natural sciences and was in keeping with his larger objective of establishing sociology as a rigorous scientific discipline. Now, let us wind up the session and thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.